Shawn Kanungo.
Wang Yip. This is episode number 8 of The Dip.
Episode number 8. This is exciting.
We're
almost done our first season.
We're almost done our first season. Now, can you explain to the folks what The Dip is, if this is the first time they're listening to The Dip?
The Dip is the brainchild of Shawn Kanungo.
It's not the brainchild.
And what it is it's an acronym. It stands for Disruption, Innovation, Prediction. We're looking at disruption that's happening in the industry, the innovations that are occurring, and finally a prediction of what's to come for the future.
I know we took a little bit of a break, and for those of you who are loyal, religious listeners of The Dip, we do apologize. It's mainly Wang's fault.
It is my fault, yes.
He met a girl, and then you know how he is. You have those buddies that meet a girl, and then they you don't see them for years.
Yeah. I met a girl on Grindr, and it just one thing led to another, and then I got busy.
Have you ever thought about just going on Grindr to see what the percentages would be if you were to, experiment with, just to see like how many hits you would get based on
my attractiveness? I don't think I'm a very attractive guy, though.
I
think there's a certain, I don't know if they're like, it doesn't apply to me, I don't think, but there's a certain, like when you see a guy, there's certain types of guys that look gay, I think.
Right.
And I don't think I give off that image.
But I don't think the guys that look, stereotypically more homosexual get necessarily more hits. Perhaps, the guys that are more burly or more, that's stereotypically that's how we look at, homosexuals.
Maybe. Yeah.
I don't know, but
I
think it would be interesting, for a next experiment, if one of us put our picture on Grindr to assess our conversion rates. We should compete on Grindr.
I think you'd win, Shawn.
You think so? Yeah. Well, I do have some revealing
I think
shots of myself.
No, well, it's not just that, but there's this, what is this, the hypothesis or theory that when you go out, you have a ring on your finger,
right.
Women are more attracted to you because you've already been vetted.
I've actually noticed that. I get a lot more women that are interested in me
with the wedding ring on.
After I had my wedding ring on.
Wow.
I'm not sure what it is. Maybe it is somebody should do a study on this. I'm gonna see if there's a study on the internet for this because it is a phenomenon.
I think it's because of what I just said. It's because a woman has vetted you. They already know that you're boyfriend or husband material because you're married.
And do you think it's like a more of an evolutionary thing, like animalistic, like in the wild? I think animals they like men that are, or they like the opposite sex when they're the male versions when they're dominant, when they're aggressive, and so the fact that you have a ring on your finger means that you have something going on, like you're stable. So there's some like evolutionary like elements to this.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, amazing. Yeah. I don't know so what are we talking about today, Wang?
Today we're talking about 3D printing. And I want to just ask you, before we get into this interview, what are your thoughts around 3D printing?
I hate 3D printing.
So when you first heard about 3D printing, you thought, I hate this 3D printing.
Well, the first thought with 3D printing, and a lot of people are, they're very skeptical about 3D printing because they think, okay, are you actually going to print me something so intricate and complex, like a chair, or maybe something more complicated like a house or a TV or like pipes or a gun?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Is this thing actually going to work?
Yes.
I think that's the question that everybody would ask. So normally people would think, okay, you want to 3D print a box or a ball? Okay, cool, I got that.
Yeah.
But to do something very complicated, I don't think people think that it's a possibility.
Now,
however, I believe that it is a possibility.
It is
that people are. Now, I'm not sure. You're the one who interviewed the expert, but I hear that you can 3D print a house, for example.
Well, I talked to Bryce Borgel,
Who's Bryce Borgel?
Okay, my background, I'm a journeyman machinist as well as a mechanical engineer technologist specializing in manufacturing. I worked as a machinist for 7 years, as a product designer for 2 years, as a shop foreman for a year, and so I've been in the manufacturing industry for 10 years. And then I worked as a repair tech in the oil patch, fixing and building pump jacks. Okay. So those big oil pump jacks that pump oil up and down.
Yep.
Fixing and installing those. So I have a strong comprehension with mechanical design. Mm-hmm. And so during my journey as a machinist and a mechanical engineer, I've been interested in 3D printing for over a decade now.
You know, interesting thing. I went online, I tried to reach out to MakerBot, who's a very famous brand for making 3D printers. And I wanted to ask them, and I reached out to the PR guy, wanted to ask them some questions about 3D printing. I reached out to them, they asked me for my audience numbers, and then I told them, they didn't get back to me. So I thought, okay, well, I'll try to find someone more local because they'll probably be more inclined to talk to me. I went and Googled 3D printing Edmonton. The first hit came up. It was called Titan Innovative Designs. And Titan Innovative Designs is a local shop here in Edmonton. They do 3D printing. And I reached out, and lo and behold, this gentleman named Bryce Borgel, I hope I'm pronouncing his last name right, reached out to me, and I knew him already.
You did?
Yeah.
You knew a guy that was actually in the 3D printing?
No, I know who Bryce is. I just didn't... I never talked to him before.
How do you know Bryce?
I know Bryce from Toastmasters.
He's in your Toastmasters
He's in my Toastmasters club. He hasn't gone for a while, and funny enough, because of a girl, but he was...
That's what happens.
He reached out to me, and I thought, wow, it's such a small world. I didn't even realize that he was into 3D printing.
Right.
So I talked to Bryce, and we talked about a lot of interesting things about 3D printing.
Tell me this. What does he do that's involved in 3D printing?
This is an interesting point, and this is something that I think a lot of people don't understand. I certainly didn't understand it when I first got into 3D printing or looked into it, but one of the things that is interesting is a lot of people want to do 3D printing for a variety of reasons.
Right.
But for his local shop, what he wanted to do, or what he really does, is he does a lot of prototyping for a lot of other companies.
Right.
So, for instance, there's maybe a doctor or a dentist that comes in. They go, I'm thinking about this new tool. I want a prototype. I want it to look like this. I want it to do certain things, or I want it to fit into this type of machine. And Bryce explains that a lot of people don't understand that there's a lot of design work that goes into 3D print. It's not as simple as just saying, hey, I want this.
Exactly. You need like a program, you need design skills to actually make it happen.
When I first came into 3D printing in 2002, the printers were tens of thousands of dollars. Your prints are minimum over $1,000, even for comparative to the size today. So the way the 3D printing industry has taken off in the last 3 years has dropped the price down significantly, but there's still a lot of back-end work that nobody realizes. Anybody that's coming off the street, any clients that need handles fixed, speaker components fixed, shrouds, hinges, anything like those small quantities, saying, well, 3D printing can fix it. Well, there's a lot of back-end work. So you got to create the model, you got to design it, you got to clean it, you got to prep it for 3D printing. You have to 3D print it, and then you got to clean it up after. There's so much back-end and front-end work in between the 3D printing that we can't make stuff for 50 or 60 bucks. You might be able to find a hobbyist down the street who's doing it as a hobby that's willing to do his time, but as a business, there's so much work involved with 3D printing. It's trying to educate the public. So with that being said, 3D printing it's an amazing industry. It's taken off. It's opening so many doors. But at the same time, those educating the public and working with various industries.
And so can you believe that people want these things for $50? You just like, hey, print me a part, Shawn. I'll give you $50 for it. That'll cover the parts, your labor, whatever.
Right.
But there's actually a lot of design work that is behind the scenes.
That people don't
people don't understand. And so he was explaining to me that there's a lot of design work. So what he does is he'll take designs, he'll make the designs, of course. He'll do a little bit of prototyping. He'll make sure that it's what the client wants.
See, so I see for prototyping.
Yeah.
For that, it makes sense for me. I think the problem is that when people think about 3D printing, they don't think that the technology is there yet so that they can get something that's usable or that makes sense. For example, my friend, he went to the library because you can go get your things printed at 3D printed at the library. So he's getting like a mount, like a police radar mount there. Like that makes sense, like a mount. But like I'm just trying to think about what I want 3D printed. Like I don't have a use case. Like do you have a use case? I don't have a use case right now for something that I want 3D printed.
I can think of use cases that I would certainly pay for. For instance, imagine that you have this machine, maybe a computer, maybe it's a sewing machine.
Okay.
You bought it 20, 30 years ago. It's still working fine. Then one day, all of a sudden, it just craps out.
Right.
And you realize that it's a specific part inside that has broken, that has maybe worn over the years, rusted, whatever. Now, you can print that specific part.
Yeah, but you could go on Amazon and get that part too.
I don't think so. Because
did you lose the part?
No, it's broken.
It's broken.
But for the sewing machine, I mean, it could be 100 years old. Do you think Amazon would still have the part? I don't think so.
Okay, so for parts it makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so for that, but you don't sew.
No.
So you're not giving me an active use case that you would use 3D printing for. So Wang Yip, if you were to use 3D printing today, what would you 3D print?
I think I would use 3D printing for prototyping.
What are you going to prototype? What are you prototyping? What in God's name are you prototyping in your house?
One of the things that I've been thinking about, actually, with my friend, is redesigning dentist tools.
Oh.
As a business idea.
That's lucrative.
Because if you think about dentist tools, and I've actually worked at a dentist's office previously, their tools are not ergonomically shaped. And so when you're using the tools, a lot of them get carpal tunnel syndrome. They have to be very careful.
Right.
And they have to be constantly working out, exercising, changing their positions as they're working on a patient's teeth. Now, if we design the tools to be ergonomic, imagine if Simple Human got into dentist tools. That's basically what I would do. I would start prototyping dentist tools, handing them to dentists. Hey, check this out. Is this better for you, etc.? And once we get a few dentists, some testimonials, and getting the product refined, start selling it.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. Okay, so that's from the consumer side standpoint. Yes. What else did you guys talk about? Like, what are some of the things that you talked about?
Yeah, one of the things that I thought was really interesting, he told me about this concept called 4D printing. What do you think 4D printing is?
4D printing?
Yes. I mean, I have a mathematical background, so when someone says to me 4D printing, I think, whoa, you can go back in time with this printer. But
4D printing to me, if you're asking me what 4D printing means, I don't know what that means. Like I'm thinking about something super immersive. I don't know.
Super immersive. What is
like
that?
I don't know. I have no clue what 4D printing. I have nothing that's coming to mind.
This is going to blow your minds.
Right now, we're still on the XYZ planes.
Yes.
And that's 3D, but there's 4D and 5D.
There's 4D and 5D.
Yeah.
What's that?
Well, 4D is MIT has already come up with a 4D printer. And so a 4D printer is how you make a part and it interacts with the environment. So it prints a part, and if the temperature drops, the part's going to shift.
Oh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So now you gave your 3D part a fourth dimension and how it works in the environment. So if the temperature drops, if the wind blows, if the sun opens up and if you printed photo cells in the plastic and that will react and change the color, technically it's a 4D item.
Yeah. Okay.
And so or even magnetism. If you add electricity to the part and then all of a sudden just by adding this electrical current, the part changes to something else, then you shut the current back and it comes back.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what 4D is.
That's amazing.
And so, But the thing is, you need to create the software in order to go that route. You need to create and to anticipate that. But you also need to educate yourself, okay, in the fourth dimension, how do we get this to react? And so this will be beneficial with mechanical seals and thread openings. So basically you can print all these microscopic holes, but when it heats up, the holes will expand and all of a sudden you can let fluid or air in. But when the thread closes and that mechanical seal gets cooled off, it's going to shrink and constrict the holes.
Right.
So it's just stuff like that. So it's just trying to think ahead, and people are making more and more advances every day and every year, making these printers faster, making print larger. But it's all on the same technology. It's to the point now, it's where how can we take it the next step, but how can we incorporate it to society more and more? I know a manufacturing company, and a few of them are incorporating 3D printers in their manufacturing processes. So they'll print a part and then machine it and mill it and run a lathe on the same 3D printed part. So it's stuff that they couldn't do years ago, but more cost effective.
Well, no, I don't think it's going to blow your mind.
The only thing I can think about is me 3D printing while I'm in the printer. That's the only thing.
3D printing inception.
Inception, yes. I'm in the printer.
Okay. 4D printing is just like regular 3D printing, except the materials are sensitive to the environment. For instance, temperature sensitive. When, let's say, a bridge is, let's say they're 3D printing a bridge.
Okay.
And it gets colder, the bridge might be, let's say, more rigid. And then when it's hotter...
So I would say that's
4D printing.
Is that 4D printing? That's what they're calling it?
Yeah, that's what they're calling it.
You know what I would call it is 3D printing plus Internet of Things. Like a connected bridge.
But it's not a connected bridge. It's not connected to the internet. It's sensitive to the environment.
It's sensitive to the environment.
Yeah.
4D is sensitive to the environment.
Yeah.
So they're doing that. They're building bridges.
Prototyping. They're building bridges with 3D printers.
So what are the cool things that they're building with 3D printing? I heard the gun.
Yeah. Have you heard of these stakes that they're printing?
It's basically, 3D printing can be used across the board in any industry. Mm-hmm. The technology is just the same, but the back end is just adjusted for the various industries. So like 3D printing a stake costs like $80,000.
That's a very expensive stake then.
That is a really expensive stake. I better be getting a car with it. So...
But the cost will come down.
Oh, yeah. I might exaggerate it there on that stake.
Yeah.
The premise behind it is they did 3D print a stake. But it just comes down to how you get everything to bind. Like the material, like the steak, that's made of beef. And then you gotta get it to bind and just come together as a finished part. I don't know if it as a steak, when you cook it, you'd still get that grainy texture, like when you rip apart meat and you see all the fibers. I don't know if it'll print all the fibers. I don't know. I didn't look into it if it prints it like a ground beef. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I didn't know, so I really don't know. But it just comes, the principle is just how do you get the material in order to make a steak look like a steak? Mm-hmm. And then you gotta cook it.
Steaks?
Yes.
Like food?
Food.
So I do know about the food.
Yeah.
So is it going to be good?
It is good. It costs $10,000.
For the one steak?
For the steak to be 3D printed.
Gotcha.
It's all the materials, it's the printer, but the cost will come down at some point.
Because with printing food, you could solve like world hunger by doing this. You're not making it from scratch. Like you're not making. You still need the base ingredients to make the food. I would assume.
Yes.
You can't just make it out of nothing.
No.
But it could solve a lot of problems in our society. You know, food is such a big problem that it could solve it.
I mean, I don't know if it would solve world hunger.
Okay, maybe that's...
Because don't you think that's a weird concept to have a 3D printer? Like everybody's gathered around a printer for food. Wouldn't it be easier to just give them like soil?
Right. No, you're
something,
right. You're right.
a powder.
You're right. We already did this food episode too,
Yeah.
So, no, you're right.
But I mean, definitely, there's other things that it could be done with.
What about cars? Are cars being 3D printed now?
I think there is, yeah. And I mean, we didn't talk about it specifically in the interview, but the one example that he told me about was if you can break down a certain part or machine or whatever you want to build into different components that are repeatable, then a 3D printer is great for that.
Right.
So, for instance, a bridge. They're 3D printing a bridge, and what they're doing is they're taking the specific parts and breaking it down into one component. They're 3D printing all of those and then just connecting everything together.
But when you talk about innovation, like before you came, I was looking at a video that they're going to be 3D printing a bridge.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
wow.
and it's just 3 or 4 robots, 2 on each side, that'll be 3D printing a bridge in Europe. And basically, it's just they're already doing it. I don't know if you know much about welding.
No.
So basically, when you do a tack weld, you take 2 pieces of metal, tack weld, and you got this little bump. Well, then how about you re-tack weld over the tack weld? Now you got a little higher bump. Tack weld on top of that. Well, the bump starts growing and growing until you got this long stick. And so that's the premise of what they're doing, and it's so simple. And the methodology behind it makes so much sense. Is just building on top of tack welds, and then to the point where the welds are strong enough that they'll stick and you can walk on top of it. So now you got a robot that's printing a bridge that can carry itself, that's building its own walkway, but making this intricate bridge. So we're going to be seeing a lot more self-replication. We'll see a lot more innovation, and we'll also be seeing a lot like just the way circuit boards and electronics are being printed and manufactured.
Okay, now did you talk to him about how 3D printing is because this thing is all about disruption.
Yes.
So,
and we did.
3D printing is a type of disruptive technology that can go into various industries.
Do you know, his answer actually surprised me because I did ask him about disruption. I said, 3D printing is disruptive. And he disagreed with me.
He disagreed with you that 3D printing is disruptive.
He said it's not disruptive. He said that it's actually an enabler. Because there's still manufacturing, but it's now accelerated and enabled by 3D printing. And I thought that was an interesting answer.
Right. But if you apply 3D printing to certain industries, they would I mean, what are we saying? Like, so the way that I would describe disruption is somebody who comes into a space, like Clay Christensen, the godfather of disruption. He's got a very complicated definition. Don't tell him that I said that. But it's complicated. The way that I would describe disruption is somebody that comes into a space, destroys the status quo, and then changes the game forever. So if I look at 3D printing, as it enters a space, it destroys the status quo and how things are traditionally done, and then it changes the game forever, meaning now it's now built a whole new platform. It's providing a whole new value. So if I look at 3D printing, like for example, I was just with a client talking about 3D printing and how they could transform their business, and they're in oil and gas, and I said, if you could 3D print the pipes, or if you could 3D print the camps that people stay in, oil and gas, if you could 3D print that, then the costs associated with that would obviously dramatically decrease. You were able to ship those things. If you could 3D print those things on the spot, it would reduce your delivery time, your logistics time. Because if you can build something that's scalable, there's so many advantages to that. That to me is disruptive.
That is disruptive. I don't disagree. But I think I see where he's going with his answer, because at least right now, it's a very nascent new industry. And it's not ubiquitous right now. Not everyone has a 3D printer. Not everyone has the skills in order to do 3D printing or complex 3D printing. And until it gets to a point where both 3D printers, the cost comes down, and I think the cost has come down for the most part. There's $300 3D printers now, so you could get one as an amateur 3D printer. The cost of the materials also has to come down, and then also the design work has to be in some way less complex, so that the everyday average person could pick up a 3D printer, just like a computer. So I'm just thinking about a computer. Back in the day when the computers were first created, they were these long, huge, complex machines. They had these punch cards that you had to put it in. Nobody really understood how to code or program some of these instructions in the computer. And nowadays, everybody's typing on these easy-to-use laptops.
Right.
So 3D printing, I think, will do the same thing. So there's this complex software. There's a few barriers here and there, but at some point, yes, it will be completely disruptive. But I don't think it's there yet.
Yeah, so what are some of the other things that you guys talk about? Are there any challenges to this?
We talked about the materials, and I thought the materials was very interesting because
The materials that you need to make...
to 3D print stuff. So you can use a variety of different materials.
Right.
And I was just fascinated because, I mean, I always thought about plastic being the main 3D printing material, but it turns out there's different wood materials, there's wood plastic, like composites, there's like spongy material where it's flexible, there's metal there's like a honeycomb structure inside the plastic.
Right, you can have
all these kind of different things.
All these types of materials.
Which is fascinating stuff to me. And then is there compostable material?
Oh, yeah.
Is there,
yeah. So half my material is biodegradable.
Okay.
It's a PLA. So the materials I got are 15 plus different materials here in the shop. I can get access to another whatever is also on the market. So you got PLA, which is a plant-based biodegradable material. So if you create a part, you can throw it in the garbage. It's made out of just organics, so like beetroot and other plant-based materials. Mm-hmm. However, with it being plant-based, it's more prone to water absorption. It's more prone to sunlight being able to degrade it.
Right.
And just a couple other things. But the PLA is comparable to ABS. And ABS is just like, it's Lego plastic. That's what ABS is. So it's not biodegradable. It's harmful for the environment. When you use it, it releases an odor or a slight smell.
Yeah.
So I got ABS, I got PLA, I got a polycarbonate ABS, which is a real stiff material, tough with the polycarbonate. Then you got a carbon fiber PLA, has crushed 40%, I think is the number, of carbon fibers in the PLA. It's lightweight, but it's brittle. And then you got your bronze fill. So the bronze fills is 80% bronze and 20% poly binder, so a plastic binder to keep the bronze together. Then you got a copper fill, a brass fill, same numbers. Then you got a Ninja Flex, which is like a nylon belt. So if you need something flexible, you can print a belt with the stuff.
Yeah.
And then you got a TPC, which is like the nylon or the Ninja Flex, but TPC Flex is like a hockey puck material. And then you got the engineering grade nylons by Tallman. So you got 4 more different grades at various tensile strengths. So it'll be flexible, but it won't be rigid. So you gotta figure out your design intent on how and what material you need to work with.
Yeah.
Then you got transparent plastics, you got stone-based plastics, you got wood-based plastics. So it's actually same as the metal fill. It's an 80% wood and a 20% poly binder. So basically, it'll smell like wood. It smells like cherry cedar or something, whatever you're printing.
Yeah.
And it's really nice. And it shows really a lot of detail. But all these materials they have their own personality. Every material has its own temperature. Every material has its own print speed and settings. So you have to actually understand how the material is going to work with your printer, how the material is going to affect your design, how the material is going to get to your final result. So you just got to figure out what the end result is and educate the client on what the material can bring. And so it's because you got materials that you can print cast iron, magnetic, like I said, graphite. I got tungsten down here, which is good for radiation shielding.
Right.
I got material for, what else? That's about it. And that's just these 3 FDM printers. Then you got to look at the Stratasys machines. You got to look at the 3D Systems machines. And then the metal 3D printers that I got access to. And then you got to look at those specs of materials. So it's just coming and figuring out what material fits the job. Mm-hmm. And you got to know what questions to ask.
Of course, now 4D printing, even more different materials that are sensitive to the environment.
So after you spoke with him, did you come up with some ideas yourself around, we could use 3D printing for X, or you could build new business models based on 3D printing, or like what was going through your mind when you were talking with him? Because naturally, when I think about these kind of things, I'm like, I just think about ideas. So what ideas, Wang Yip, do you have around 3D printing?
To be
other than the dentist one, which is a great idea.
Yeah. No, to be completely honest, I didn't have any ideas. And the way that I approach problems and solution and innovation in general is I like to
come up with a problem.
Well, no, I don't come up with the problem. I like to think of the variety of solutions that are available and keep them in the back of my mind. And then what happens is anytime a problem comes up, I run that problem through all the solutions that I have.
Do you know what James Altucher does? He writes down all his ideas every single day.
Well, he writes down 10 ideas.
That's right.
Yeah. Have you started writing 10 ideas every day?
I have not done that. Here's the thing, Wang, and I want to test this idea by you.
Okay.
My idea is this, that eventually people will want to 3D print their own stuff. At some point, there's a notion that maybe people will have their own 3D printers at home. Of course, they can have 3D printers at home now.
Yes.
It's just not applicable. Like you don't need 3D printers every day.
No.
So what there's going to be is like now you have these big box stores like Walmart where you can get everything. Eventually, there's going to be a big retailer that will provide only 3D printing. Like you can just get stuff 3D printed at this shop, and they'll 3D print whatever you want. You know, they have all the material at the store. You go, like they have an online model. You say, like, what do you want to print? You know, they'll have like a specialist, a design specialist that will help design the product for you. You go to the store, and then you print your whatever you want. Mm-hmm. And this store will be replicated. Well, you know, the store will be everywhere. Mm-hmm. So there's still an offline purpose to it. Like there's still an offline. You have retail stores.
Yes.
That's still offline. Presence, yeah. But online, you would help design it. You get you'd have somebody that would interface between you and the store, and then you physically go to the store and print it, or they would ship it to you. So instead of having these massive retailers like Walmart, you would have a massive 3D printing retail store. What do you think about this idea?
I think it's a good idea. I think there's definitely a possibility that it will happen. Although
the only problem that I have is I don't know what I want 3D printed today.
But you can get anything 3D printed.
No, I know, but
so if you wanted to buy, for instance, a T-shirt, you could probably get that 3D printed. No,
I think based on our last. No, I don't think so. I think
glasses.
Glasses would be interesting because the markup on glasses is very high. Now you're talking about something very cool.
Yeah.
Because the markup on glasses is insane.
I
remember going to Bangladesh. You walk down the street. There's all these eyewear places.
Right.
You can get glasses for like $3, and they're nice. They all say Gucci on it. Of course, they're not Gucci, but the glasses are really, really cheap. I think the markup on the glasses are incredible.
I heard that that's
actually brilliant.
Yeah, there's an optic center here that sells, of course, glasses and lenses, and the markup on the glasses is so high that like some family members all they do is just bring in supplies from China, Bangladesh, wherever, bring in those glasses and they sell them for, I don't know how much it is, but like my glasses were not that expensive. They're not Armani, but they were maybe $50, which is, I don't know, 10 times more expensive probably.
Yeah, the glasses is an interesting. You know, you could identify some products that have huge margins and say, what can you...
Popcorn. Do you know that popcorn has huge margins?
No, I didn't know that. Is it really cheap to get popcorn?
Yeah. They have huge margins.
If you go to at the theaters...
Well,
theater is just like a ripoff.
Theaters, The markup on popcorn, I think, is like 200%.
But, you know, I'm not a... Do you get popcorn at the
No,
theater?
I don't get popcorn.
Neither do I. I feel gross. You have the
But it's a huge...
Sitting there with those big bags of popcorn.
But I think
like
people...
Butter on it is disgusting.
No, but...
Ugh. Yeah,
I don't know if it's disgusting, but people like to snack on stuff.
People who eat popcorn at theaters are disgusting. They are. Let it be known that if you are watching a movie with me, I do not want you...
Do you eat anything while watching movies?
I want to, but I'm watching my love handles. They're just expanding as we.
Well, you could eat something else.
No,
do you like drink pop?
I love snacking. I'm.
Do you eat chips?
I love chips. Chips are the best. Amazing.
It's the worst food, but
chips, like you get that Miss Vicky's. Like it's just beautiful.
Okay.
Anyways, Wang Yip, if I gave you a crystal ball around 3D printing, where will it be in the next 10 years? No, 20 years. Let's go.
20 years.
20 years.
That's a long time.
Well, in 20 years, I think we're already there. What you're talking about with your example. There's already printers on the market for $300, $500, $1,000, $2,000, and people are coming on the market and they're trying to make a name for themselves. But the economics and the industry hasn't caught up.
Yeah.
So basically, the education is trying to incorporate that and create 3D businesses out of it. So being able to create a trade or incorporate into 3D designing, incorporate the 3D printing into the design aspect as a mechanical engineer or civil designer or architectural. So I think we're already there, but in 20 years I think the technology is going to get light speed faster. It's going to be rampant. I think we'll actually be looking into Star Trek. I think in 20 years, I think where you can make parts instead of hours and minutes. I think retail outlets will change. I think you'll see more of these 3D printers in retail outlets to the point where standard fasteners and simple objects, you just go to retail outlet, I need this, this, and this. They'll print it for you in 20 years and you'll have the parts. And it's going to be I think it's going to be at the infancy stage, so it's not going to be complex. So you won't be able to print yourself scissors, or you won't be able to print yourself a new ladder, or you won't be able to print yourself stuff like that. But I think simple things, it's nuts and bolts, or a simple screwdriver, or I think stuff as a hook, or just simple objects that can be manufactured will be incorporated into retail outlets to the point where you just tell how many you want, it's just going to print it right for you and just drop into your basket. That's where I think 3D printing is going to go.
I think I would have to say that
20 years, yeah.
I don't think 3D printing will be ubiquitous at that point. It still won't have come down.
In 20 years?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Wow.
Yeah. I think more people will have 3D printing, but just like our conversation today, where's the use case for 3D printing? I don't know if I would use the 3D printer every single day.
For enterprise, there's going to be a use.
Yes.
Like, I think in 20 years, we will be able to print houses, and this will be a huge advantage for people, people who don't have homes, people who in third world countries where, they're living in huts and stuff. You could build a whole city using 3D printing, and because they can be standardized, they can be like. I think in 20 years we will be able to build a house with 3D printing.
If we can build a house, that means that we can build buildings then.
Absolutely.
With 3D printing.
I mean, I'm sure obviously we should do the research before getting it. I should do the research, but I'm sure somebody's building.
They're already 3D printing bridges. So if they can build that kind of infrastructure, then any kind of infrastructure that's similar.
So name the most complicated piece of technology today. Like, what's the most complicated piece of technology today? And can that be 3D printed?
Humans? No.
Humans be 3D printed. No. Well, that would be...
But prosthetic limbs.
Oh, that would be interesting. For the porn industry, that would be very interesting.
The porn industry? What do you mean?
Well, maybe that's where my mind goes to. Because if you could 3D print a woman...
I don't think
I could 3D print Kim Kardashian. No, just stick with me here.
Okay, yeah.
If I could 3D print a replica of Kim Kardashian, or somebody who you think is hot.
Do you think Kim Kardashian's hot?
I think she's very hot. I don't find her. I think she's completely underrated, which is odd that I would say that, because obviously she's so exposed, but she's beautiful. Like her face, like I think her body, like she's beautiful. She's underrated because people don't like her, and then naturally, she's like Kim Kardashian, just like Bieber. People hate on Bieber, but Bieber is a phenomenal artist.
Oh, he's talented. Yeah,
he's super talented. And people just knock him like, Bieber's an idiot. But Bieber is super talented. Anyways, that's my soapbox. But okay, let me just...
Yeah, sorry.
If you were to 3D print a woman or a man, for those listening, if you could 3D print them, like in terms of...
You would be 3D printing a doll.
Yeah,
not?
Exactly.
Okay,
and then, people are weird with their sex stuff, and they can just do stuff with it. That's why people have dolls. I don't know. I don't
have dolls.
I don't either. Anyways, we're getting off topic here. But if you were to give me a crystal ball, around 3D printing, what I would say is this: people will not have 3D printers in their house. They won't.
So you agreed?
I agree with you. They're not going to have 3D printers.
But you're saying that enterprises will.
Every enterprise will have a 3D printing.
Yeah.
If you're a business, it will be mandatory to have a 3D printing. It's just like printing today. Most people don't have a printer at home.
No.
But in enterprise, they all have printers.
Yes.
So it's going to be like the scanner. It's going to be like the fax machine, the printer, the photocopier. It's going to be like all that bullshit that you have at work.
Yeah.
You're going to have a 3D printer.
Okay.
Because in terms of procurement and all that, crayons and like pencils and pens, I don't even know if that will be relevant in the future, but all that kind of stuff, they'll print it instead of... So that's what I think. It's going to be an enterprise play.
Question for you.
Yes.
If we have a 3D printer in our respective consulting firms, what would we use it for? What would you use it for?
I would do it for prototypes. I would use it right now for prototypes. Yeah.
But what kind of prototypes would you do?
I think we would probably... That's a good point. I mean, it depends on the project, right? Like, I'm working on a project right now with an oil and gas company, so I would show them how 3D printing... So I would 3D print a pipe or something.
Yeah.
Or I'm working with another client right now, and they're like workplace safety. I'm just trying to think. I don't know. I have no clue. But I would try to just tailor it to all the industries to show them the power of 3D printing. I wouldn't actually use it for anything other, and then just prototypes. I think that's it.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think about what it would be used for, because of course it would depend on the industry. And I'm trying to think: do we really do anything in professional services that really needs 3D printing?
No, but I mean, if you worked in real estate,
Absolutely.
or if you worked in
Absolutely.
anything like manufacturing, people who have real jobs and make real products.
What are you saying?
They would. I see the use case.
Yeah.
So this is great. So, Wang, anything else that you learned from your interview, or anything that you want to take away from this amazing podcast that we're having?
No.
Amazing. So listen, you know what we should have, Wang? We should have a bonus episode for the fans. It's Christmas time.
Absolutely. I agree.
And we should give something back for the fans.
What do you want to do in the bonus episode?
I just want to riff. I think it's just me and you just riffing on stuff, questions.
I didn't bring my guitar.
Hilarious. Why don't we do this? So this is what should people do if they listen to this entirety of this episode? What should they do? What are the follow-ups on this?
Please, if you haven't already done so, subscribe to The Dip, either on iTunes or your favorite podcast player. There's many on Android and Windows, I'm sure, that you could probably download and listen to this podcast. And if you feel inclined to, I think you should leave a review. Maybe 4 stars, maybe 5 stars, 1 star even. Provide us with some feedback. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like. Tell us if you think Shawn is really handsome.
Absolutely.
Whatever you want. And tweet us.
All right, we're out. Great episode.
You guys have a great day.